Hey everyone, this is Stella After with Closeout, and in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to catch a sales predator, how to stop salespeople from frauding you, your business, your startup, or and slash your customers. Here's why I want to talk about this. One of the beauties about Closeout, the way that we've built our Inside Sales CRM, is that we believe in transparency, and in Closeout, you can actually see all the communication that is happening with a customer or a prospect in a beautiful timeline. All emails are captured and automatically tracked. All phone calls are captured and automatically tracked. And if you want, they can be recorded as well. So the entire sales organization or the entire company really can have full transparency in everything that is going on. Now, that is a beautiful thing, right? And we love that. It has a lot of benefits to it, and we can talk about that at a different time. Sales transparency might be a really good topic to talk about. But the reason why I'm talking about it is that just recently we had another case where one of our customers caught a salesperson in their team, in their startup, doing some really shady shit very quickly because of Closeout, because of the level of transparency that we show. And it's not the first time, and I assume it's not going to be the last time. So I'm going to share the story of that customer and how they caught somebody doing some really crazy stuff. And then I'm going to teach you and talk about kind of the history of why salespeople have always had a history of some bad salespeople, always had a history of doing some fraudulent activities, how to prevent that and how to catch that and how to react to it if it ever happens in your team. Now, I hope it never happens in your team. Honestly, this has never happened in our team, at least in our sales team. We had an example in the past of a new hire that we had made on the product team that was kind of trying to fraud us and fake some of his work. And I might touch on that a little bit. But in the sales team, we never had that issue, thankfully. We've never really had that issue with a long-term employee, just with somebody that had been with the team for 2 weeks or something. But I think it's an important topic, and I want to share some light on it. So first, let me talk about the story, right? So here's what happened with Ryan, one of our customers. He has a startup that he's running. They're hustling. They're doing lots of sales calls. He hires a new salesperson, a remote salesperson as far as I know. And that person's job and that person's sales commission is reliant upon setting up demos for Ryan, who's the founder and CEO, to close those deals. Now, Ryan has had a little bit of a suspicion that something was weird and eventually looked at one of these demos that the salesperson had set up, looked at the timeline within Closeout, and saw a few weird things happening, right? So he saw that the email account had switched. There was an email conversation going back and forth with that prospect, but funny enough, it was not the professional email address of that person, but their personal email. And I think that there was even a change from Gmail to Hotmail or something else, just funky going on there that Ryan noticed. The other thing that Ryan noticed is, when he started listening to some of these calls that new sales rep had made to convince that prospect to get on a demo, he listened to the call recordings that were in Close, and he could hear there was kind of a weird conversation, and it almost sounded like the salesperson was talking to himself using a voice distortion machine or software app to kind of distort his voice a little bit, going back and forth. It was kind of a weird, unnatural sounding conversation. The other person still kind of sounded like the sales guy, just with a funky accent. And that was so mind-blowingly weird that Ryan went to a number of other calls that sales rep had, listened to those, and they all sounded like the other person was the same person, mainly the sales rep with a voice distorter. I mean, this is really mind-blowing stuff. I've never heard this specific case before of somebody doing fraud. And then the other thing that happened is that Ryan started calling some of these people at the companies that they're supposedly working at, and realizing that these people either don't exist at those companies or they sound completely different than the person that's on the voice recording with the sales rep, and they know nothing about or very little about what's going on. Some of the demos that Ryan had got scheduled from that sales rep seemed weird because he would talk to these people and they seemed to know nothing about the space, nothing really about marketing, and they were supposed to be, I don't know, marketing directors or at least experts. So he started gaining the suspicion that this rep was faking these interactions, faking these calls and then asking friends to take the call with Ryan, pretending to be the prospect interested in a demo, and then ultimately just not buying. So the sales rep could get all the commission with very little work, and it would all seem legitimate. Now, Ryan recorded a video, and we're going to link to that so you can hear the entire story. You can actually, they captured everything from the moment he saw this to the moment he called that rep and confronted him on it. The rep hung up eventually, right? And wasn't available anymore, so kind of confirmed the suspicion. So you can, if you really want to know this case study, we can like link to it and show you more about it. But ultimately, after doing a lot of like looking into things, he realized that that's really what was happening. And Ryan was really heartbroken and mind blown. Like he had never experienced anything like that, although he's an experienced founder. Now, when he shared that story with us, unfortunately, it was not the first time I saw this. And it's not the first time that one of our customers reported that the transparency level that we show by capturing all emails and by allowing you and empowering you to record these phone conversations and everybody to be able to listen to them. It's not the first time that our customers use that transparency to look into things and then realize, shit, my reps is faking things. Like one other example, famous example that we had was one rep like killing their call numbers and really seemingly doing this massive amount of activity. And then the founder looked into these calls and they were all 3-second calls. So the rep would call and hang up and just write out call notes that, yeah, the prospect said call me again, or they're interested in a demo, or this happened, or that happened, or I didn't reach them. But what the rep was really doing was call, hang up, call, hang up, call, hang up, call, hang up, just inflating his activity numbers without doing any real work. And the founder found that out, I think, within, again, a short period of time, like 2 or 3 weeks, and let go of that rep. So we've had a number of these examples, and I can guarantee you from experience that unfortunately many companies have these fraudulent sales people slip through the cracks once in a while and do some shady stuff, but usually it takes very long to catch them. And the reason why traditionally it took so long to catch them was because of a lack of transparency, right? Enough pitching the beauty of closeout, right, and the beauty of transparency in sales. Let me push this aside and now talk a little bit about why salespeople do that, how they do these fraudulent activities, and how to catch them or what to do about it, all right? So, well, the reason why salespeople or some salespeople do this stuff, and given all salespeople a really bad rap, is a mixed bag, but it definitely has to do a lot with greed. It has a lot to do with being desperate. It has a lot to do with pressure, right? Salespeople have to perform. There's no way around it. And when things are going bad, some people just don't have the character strength. Once they had a bad quarter or a bad week, they don't have the character strength to push through that. And they look for shortcuts and they look for ways around it, and they convince themselves that, faking this or faking that or pretending this or pretending that won't really harm anybody. And before they know it, they're knee deep in shit. And this is not just happening in sales. The financial sector is a good example, right? How many cases do we know where people that handle a lot of money and that are paid big commissions start faking accounts, start faking things, and then once they're in that downward spiral, then never get their way back until things blow up, right? So the reason salespeople do that is character weakness, greed, and opportunity, right? When they feel like they could easily do this and nobody would notice. There's multiple ways that salespeople can fraud, and it's not all as crazy and crass as this sales guy faking these demo calls with a voice distorter. I mean, holy shit, what the fuck, right? I've never heard this before. That's an extreme example, but there's many examples that are much lighter but equally harmful to your business, right? One thing is obviously you can fake activity. You can report that you've made a certain number of calls and you spend a certain number of time prospecting or a certain number of sending emails without really doing any of that activity. That's one way of fraud. It's fraud, right? You're not really stealing money per se like this guy did, but you are pretending to do work and being paid for that work that you're not really doing. So you're actually stealing money from your employer. There is another case, so this is faking activity, right? There's another case or another way that salespeople fraud their employers and startups is they create bad opportunities, which means that they talk to people and these people are not really interested, and the sales reps will just pretend they are, or they're not going to really qualify them correctly, or they will, they'll realize that that customer, that prospect is not really an ideal customer, but they will pretend they are anyways, just to create an opportunity, just to create a demo scheduled. They sometimes will make fake promises. Oh, you really need this feature? This is definitely something we can do, but you can't, and you don't have that feature in your product. They can, another really, so that's another one, right? So I need to make sure that I keep these distinct. Faking activity, creating bad opportunities, and doing bad qualification of prospects. The next one is stealing other reps' leads, opportunities, or deals. This is a common example, right? A sales rep will feel like their opportunities or their leads aren't good, so they'll try to capture somebody else's opportunities in the company, stealing their data, stealing their ops, calling their prospects, sending emails to their prospects, trying to claim credit for deals closed that they shouldn't claim credit. And depending on how you allocate leads and opportunities and prospects within your sales team, this can be easier or harder, but it's definitely a common case that you need to take into account. The next thing that salespeople do when they want to fraud your company is creating really bad closes, right? So they'll close a deal that shouldn't be closed, and there's many flavors to this. One really popular flavor is telling the customer, hey, just give me your credit card. Hey, just commit to this right now. You have 60 days to cancel. You can cancel risk-free. Maybe you have that policy in place, maybe you don't. But basically what the sales rep does is, before the customer is really fully committed, before they're really fully convinced, they pretend that customer has decided to purchase, but they're telling the customer that, that purchase, that decision is not really final yet, but they're reporting to you that it is. So, you report on this as revenue, you forecast with that revenue, you might even charge the credit card or charge the customer, but the customer is not yet convinced, they're not yet closed. So this will mean that a little down the line, the customer will be furious and want their money back, will cancel. You see really high churn rates, and that's a fairly common case. Sometimes salespeople just beg and say, hey, can you just put in your credit card? Yeah, we're not going to charge you till 2 months from now, and I just need a really good quarter, and there's zero risk for you. Right? This shit is really hurting your business because you're paying out commissions, you're forecasting, you're showing numbers and trajectories and graphing reports that you send to investors and to other people in the company, and then boom, there's all this churn that is happening because this revenue was never really real. And then, and then there's real, just flat out 100% fraud, right? This is when somebody sets up fake appointments with people that don't exist. This is when a sales rep is closing deals or faking signatures, or putting in wrong or fake credit cards. Really, this is the real criminal shit. This is somebody that's not just desperate in the moment and thinking, I'll make an exception. This is somebody that knows what they're doing, and they're in there and they're saying, I'm going to be stealing and lying and frauding you out of money, right? There's a lot more of the prior cases that I mentioned. In reality, a lot more salespeople that will fake activity, create bad ops, create bad closes. There's a lot more of that, and very rarely do you see somebody really using fake voices and fake appointments and fake signatures and fake shit to steal money 100%. That's a rare case, but still happens. So all of these ways are common ways that some salespeople might want to fraud your company. It sucks that this exists, but it's just a reality you need to deal with. And the best way to catch it is to prevent it, right? Prevention is really the best, is much better than detection. That means that you should really be careful in your hiring process. You should really put a high emphasis on character and not just aggressiveness and sales ability, but really do background checks. Do backdoor background checks. Call people that have worked with a sales rep before without getting a direct reference and ask how their experience has been. Try to call customers of that sales rep and ask how the experience was. You really need to do your homework on your sales reps and make sure that you hire people of high integrity and strong character. If you spend a lot of time doing that, you're not going to have these cases. I can tell you that in what is it, 15 years of hiring salespeople now, I've never had a sales rep fraud me or a sales rep steal or lie in any of these scenarios, right? That has never happened. I mentioned to you that we, as a company, had this case 3 or 4 years ago once where we hired a remote designer that showed us some amazing work. He came in, he was remote, we flew him in to meet him, and he was working on his laptop pretending to work and showing us some really cool stuff, and we were really convinced. He had a really good track record in terms of the companies that he worked at in the past were really like high caliber organizations. So we hired him, and we realized that he was not delivering the work that we wanted from him, and he was always kind of stalling that this is going to be ready on Friday, and then it's not ready, it's going to be ready on Wednesday, and then on Wednesday, yeah, I've uploaded it, but the upload didn't work, and that happened for like 3 weeks or so until we realized that he wasn't doing any work. And then when he showed us what he did, it looked nothing like the quality that he showed us before. So we did a bit more research, and we found out that the work that he showed us before was not really from him, right? Mind-blowing again. And we had to let him go. So we wasted 3 weeks working with a designer that was not really good, and he kind of frauded us and faked us into it. Back in the day, we were not really good in doing background checks before offering somebody a job, and we're really good at that after that lesson learned. But that's the only example I can think of. This is somebody we had hired, and within 3 weeks we'd let go. So if you spend a lot of time being deliberate in your hiring process, hiring for character and culture fit, doing background checks, you should have a very limited amount of these kind of problems, if not none of them. But what happens, so what else can you do? Well, transparency is a biggie, right? Try to make sure that you have a structure and a team culture where the work of every single sales rep can be transparent, so people can look over it and things can pop up so people notice them. It's not like every sales rep shouldn't be a black box and an island to themselves, because if you don't control that multiple times a day, people can fraud you, and you won't notice, or you will notice way too late. You want to trust but verify, especially in the early days. So, I like to trust people, but in the early days, you want to check in on things. You want to join certain customer calls and not just take the sales rep word for, I had a really great call. Especially in the first month or two, you want to check in on their work, look at their emails, participate in the phone calls they have. When they close a customer, maybe a week later, do a quality call, right? Where you as the founder call and say, hey, I just wanted to thank you again for your business. I know you talked to, Bob from our team. I just wanted to see, what was your experience up until this point? Now that you've purchased 2 weeks ago, have we really treated you well as a customer? And get some feedback. And if everything you hear is positive and everything checks out, you can ease on that. And instead of checking, every week, you can start checking every month, every quarter, maybe once a year at some point. But no matter how much you trust, you should verify occasionally, right? That's a really good idea. When you catch somebody that is lying, frauding, or doing some other shady shit with your company, what should you do? First, make sure you don't react emotionally, you don't act in a panic or immediately. Don't be trigger happy here. Trigger happy meaning the moment you see something in the next 10 minutes, confront the sales rep. Don't do that. Don't dwell on it for weeks and months either. That's crazy too. When you see it, it's a priority. But what you should do first is collect more evidence to really see if there's a pattern or if this is an outlier. Really check in on more prospects, check in on more calls, do more reference checks. Just try to collect more data to make sure that this is not a fluke, that you have as much proof as possible. So take a day or two to really do your homework. Put together an action plan. What if you're right? If you're right and they've really done all this shady shit, what's the action plan if you confront the sales rep and they admit it, or they can't give you a good reason not to believe that? Okay, we're gonna have to do these, have a to-do list, a bullet point list of disconnect their email account, their phone number, make sure that they don't steal any data from you, make sure that you have the laptop back, make sure you have, whatever it is, the legal stuff in place. Make sure that there is clear legal communication in an email thread or in other forms that proves that the reason why you've let them go and kind of the sequence of events. In some cases, depending how big this is, if it's a small case, you might not need to reach out to a lawyer, but if it's something big and really crazy, you might want to consult with your lawyer really briefly. But you want to do your homework in collecting a lot of data on what really happened, and then on having a game plan in place in terms of in case that you're right and they have to split ways. You don't want to emotionally just run into a room, start screaming at a sales rep that might be a really of questionable character, and then leave, and then an hour later realize that this person has deleted all your data or stolen all your contacts or done some other even more and bigger harm in your company. So you have an action plan and a to-do list, think through the risks, and then eventually you want to calm and collectively sit down and confront that person, ideally with a third person in place, right? So it's not just you and that person. So you have a witness basically, somebody that can moderate if things get heated up, and just calmly and collectively say, hey, I noticed something, it was weird, so I looked into it further. Here's all the data I have. Can you explain this to me? Just keep it at that. Don't make any accusations. Don't get angry. Don't scream at them. Don't tell them you've lied, you've done. No. Don't make any claims. Just provide all the hard facts, the evidence. Here's the email. Here's the phone call. Here's this. Here's that. Can you explain this to me? And then see what they're going to tell you and how they're going to tell it to you, right? How do they react? There might be an explanation. Sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes somebody can say something and you go, oh, shit. Yeah, this all makes sense now. And then you can apologize and thank them for giving you context and ask them, hey, how can we prevent this from happening in the future, right? When I saw this, it seemed concerning. Was this me or is there a way that we can prevent this from happening in the future, not just with you, but with other reps? But if they can't give you a good explanation, if they don't stay calm and collected, if they don't have context that changes the picture, then you need to let them go immediately. No second chances. No second chances, right? And to me, it doesn't matter if this person worked for you for 3 weeks or 3 years, no matter how much you like them. If somebody admits that they lied, they need to go. Because even if you believe that they're a great person, they can change, and this was an outlier. And I believe that people make mistakes, right? And I believe in second chances. If you give them a second chance, there's a big risk that this was not the first time they did this, and maybe they did this in the past and you didn't catch them. So it's not really the second, but it's like the fifth chance, you just don't realize it. But even if it is, you're sending a signal to other people and to this person that you don't like this activity, but you will tolerate it, you will allow it, and you can't. I would have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to this. Once you notice it that moment, that day after that conversation, you need to let them go. Then you have somebody run through the action plan of like disabling all their accounts, taking all their company-owned laptops, phones, whatever they have, and parting ways. And doing so in a way that's gracefully, so you're not screaming at them, you're not embarrassing them, you're not doing that in public in front of other people. It's a calm, collected conversation. They can leave that day, and that's it. You part ways, and then you have a meeting with the team. You transparently, immediately explain what happened, how you captured it. You ask people for feedback on how to prevent these things from going on. And basically, intrinsically, you set an example and set a very strong signal that you're not to be fucked around with, and this is not going to be tolerated even a little bit. People will thank you for it. People will trust you for it, and the team will feel like their future is in good hands because you are, as the founder, CEO, the VP of sales, you are a strong leader and somebody that's going to protect them from people in the team that are working against them and against the best interests of the company and the customers. All right, that's all I got. If you've had any experiences, any stories, any best practices you want to share with us, please let us know in the comment section. If you haven't yet, go to blog.close.io and make sure to subscribe to our blog. I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon. This is it from me. Now let's go and get them.